What's up, everybody? We are back. It's another week, another loss by the Hurricanes, another post-game show with Petrie and Jordan, presented by About the Fans. Petrie, you were making me laugh and enlightening me with good stats right before we went live. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that one statistic that was horrific.
Yeah, I mentioned right before the show that I was only sarcastic. I was a little half sarcastic with this one before the game. I said I wonder if Miami will be able to have as many red zone drives as Clemson has touchdowns. So as of the end of the game, Clemson had 5 touchdowns, and Miami had one single red zone drive. And that red zone drive wasn't even a product of the offense producing yards. It was actually because Clemson fumbled the ball on their own 10-yard line. Defense recovered it, and that set up the sole touchdown of the game. So, in other words, they had 5 touchdowns. We had 0 real red zone drives.
That's pretty horrific, man. Honestly, because that does sound like a joke stat, right? Like that's totally the type of thing that that I would have said to try to ruffle some feathers amongst people. So I'm glad me and you were on the same page with that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And it sucks when we're right on, right? My prediction for this game was 38-13, ended up being 40-10. So it was about what I expected today. So there's 2 players that I want to talk about. Do you want to start with a positive or a negative? And these are my opinions.
Yeah, I think we should let's start with a negative, get the nasty out of the way. Let's turn it into a positive. Try to spin it to a positive near the end there.
Okay, Jakari Brown. We talked about him last week. We talked about the good and the bad against Georgia Tech. We talked about what he might look like this week. So I want to talk about his game today. For me, it was a negative. How did you feel about Jakari and his performance today?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to put that with a lens of zero context. We have to kind of qualify it a little bit. Of course,
Sure.
true, as I always say, true freshman last year. This was his second ever real start, and against Clemson, top 10, and maybe they should be ranked higher. Who's to say?
Yeah.
He did struggle, I think, but that's what happens. Clemson's a very serious defense. A lot of those players will be in the NFL in a few years, and so
Yeah.
not his best game, certainly not.
Yeah, and I appreciate you qualifying it that way because I certainly fully agree with that context. The reason why I put it as a negative was because last week was really encouraging. Me and you, kind of wanted to see what would happen this week before we got too excited. However, many people in the fan base were, ready to kind of hand the reins to Jakari. Yeah, to anoint him as QB1 for the future, right? I didn't see really anything today. After today's game, I think we need to proceed without any definite plans about the quarterback position for the future, right? I believe we will have a transfer, going out of the room. I think we need to be recruiting the best player available to come in and play quarterback for the Miami Hurricanes. If Jakari Brown at some point in his career, convincingly takes over the starter role, I'm happy about it. I'm fine with it. More power to him. But for now, I certainly do not think that he is the type of player that you plan around when you're developing this roster.
Yeah. What gives me a lot of encouragement about Jakari specifically is he does have those physical tools. Man, when he throws it, it is a pretty ball flying through the air. It is very nice. It looks very good off his hands. If he can hone in that accuracy a bit, he's got the arm and he does have the physical attributes to be able to, take off and run with it. However, yeah, 100% agreed. I think we see at least one transfer out and a transfer in for what it's worth. So the QB room is going to be looking completely different next year, especially when you consider that Emory Williams will be coming in as a true freshman.
Yeah, it was,
not that he's going to play next year, but, just saying the QB room is going to look vastly different from how we thought it would be.
For sure. I think there's a good chance that Jakari is the only quarterback on the roster next year from this season. Two plays that kind of stuck out, and it was kind of a tale of two quarterbacks. Jake, he had that wheel route to Jaleel Skinner up the sideline, nearly perfectly thrown ball. If it was maybe a yard further down the field, it would have been 6. Nonetheless, still a great ball. The only reason why it wasn't perfect was because it allowed Jeremiah Trotter to make a fantastic defensive play and break the pass up, right? So that is the only thing that stopped it from being a perfect pass. And then you had, Xavier Restrepo in the first quarter streaking down the center of the field, and Jakari overthrows him by about 10 yards. So two big missed opportunities there. I don't know, man. I don't know what to think about our quarterbacks. I don't even know who I'd start next week. If you are the coach, whether it's Gaddis or Cristobal, whoever has final say, who are you starting next week between Jake and Jakari?
Yeah, I think it's Jakari still. Jake Garcia has just shown to be, unfortunately, a little too irresponsible with the football. I do think that Jakari is very quick to pull the trigger on, well, I'm not throwing this one, I'm just going to run it.
Yep.
However, that usually turns into at least 3 or 4 yards on the ground as opposed to an interception. So I would say Jakari in this situation.
I agree in the sense that it might be a little too strong to say that Jakari is a good decision maker, because I think there's still a little bit of inexperience, but I certainly think he's not a bad decision maker, if that makes sense. Like, he is good at not making bad decisions. And Jake does not have that. Jake is that gunslinger mentality, Brett Favre, Tony Romo, Josh Allen, all those guys, except for those are the best case scenarios, right?
Right.
There's a lot of dudes that didn't become Hall of Famers that had that issue, where he forces it into tight windows, he's just kind of slinging it, and it often turns out to be a bad decision. I do like that about Jakari in the sense that he is not making those poor decisions. I do think he leaves good decisions on the table on occasion, but it's better to miss out on a good decision than to actively make a bad decision.
Yeah, exactly. One of my favorite things to say about any kind of a football strategy on a basic fundamental level is no negative plays. No negative plays. Even if you just get to the line of scrimmage, get back to the line of scrimmage, that is exponentially better than any kind of loss.
Yep.
So you just getting back to the line, you leave the playbook a little bit more open. Losing yardage, you put yourself in a difficult position where you can only call so many different kinds of plays, and the defense sort of knows what you're about to do. So that's why you can't take any kind of negative plays. And Jakari has that factor. We touched on this last week too. Some guys have this and some guys simply don't. An innate ability, almost an instinct of sorts, to simply fall forward and get 2 or 3 yards as opposed to falling backwards and it's a loss of 1 or 2. That's a 5-yard swing. That's massive.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Especially in the middle of the field where you're playing the field position game.
Yeah. So moving on to a more positive note, let's talk about Cam Kinchens.
Wow.
Who by all accounts was maybe the only shining star of today. I do think that good things could be said about our defense. They really held Clemson, even though that we only scored 3 points in 3 quarters. I think holding Clemson to 26 kept that game alive, right? They kept a floundering offense in the game. So when Jake came in, that fumble, we drive a 10-yard score, kind of a shot of adrenaline, and made it a game, really. So credit to the defense, but Cam Kinchens especially, he's playing like an All-American right now.
Yeah. It's funny that you would say it in that way too, because it was one of the funnier and one of my favorite interactions that happened on Twitter today. I think Marsh said, excuse me, I correct myself. Mike McCoy said Cam Kinchens is an all ACC safety this year. And then Marsh quoted it and said, future All-American. And then somebody else quoted it and said, he's an All-American right now. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's probably my favorite 3-tweet sequence that I saw on Twitter today. And
Yeah.
I couldn't possibly agree more with all three of those.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's just, I mean, someone brought up the tweet, or someone tweeted earlier this week where they're like, Cam Kinchens right now is leading the country in interceptions. He's also the guy that was getting ripped into by Mario during the Bethune-Cookman game. If we remember, and it kind of drew some ire towards Mario on the national media landscape. And then people are saying that he's being too hard. He sat Kinchens down. He was just tearing into him in front of all of his teammates, screaming at him, pointing at him. And look at the turnaround that has happened. Here Kinchens is, I mean, he might not be an All-American. I certainly think he's all-conference, but I think he should be in the discussion for an All-American spot.
Yeah. A lot of times, and so he leads the nation in interceptions, as you brought that up. A lot of times, interceptions are a product of other things that happen around you. That is certainly true.
Mm-hmm.
However, you don't get to lead in the country by accident. He has this character about him where he is always around the football. He is always around the football. Every single play, almost every single play, I shouldn't say every single play, almost every play, when that running back or when that wide receiver is bouncing up off the turf and getting ready to hand the ball to the ref, Kinchens is there within 5 yards of the play almost every single time.
Yep.
Why is he always there? Well, they mentioned that he's a film junkie. He's really interested in studying film, and that's a product of that too. Being in the right place at the right time all the time is not a mistake.
Yeah.
Or not an accident, rather, a coincidence.
I think it shows. It would not surprise me to see Mario really lean on Cam next season as kind of the heart and soul of the team. I mean, I'm not Mario. I have to imagine, though, that Mario is very aware that, he was very publicly ripping Cam. I mean, it was on national television. It was, talked about. And then Cam has stepped up. I that has like Mario Cristobal DNA all over it. So I'm kind of excited to watch that as like a thread throughout next year, in the sense of how much is Mario leaning on Cam to help set the culture, set the tone. Kind of hoping that the roster will take on that mentality as a whole. I think that's fantastic that we have a guy like him for this rebuild process.
Yeah, and 100% agree with that. We do need a few more dogs like that. It's great to have a guy like Kinchens, and if he's going to be, I actually, this is a perfect time to transition into plugging one of my own tweets. I said earlier in the game, I said Cam Kinchens is the best overall player on the team. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Cam Kinchens is the best overall player on the team by 100 miles. I have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's, best player on the team. I take no issue with a safety being the best player, the best technical, skilled, overall attributes player on the team. No issue with that whatsoever. I do take issue with him being the best player on the team by 100 miles.
Yeah. Hopefully we can find a quarterback transfer who has, let's say De'Aaron King's mentality with, but some skills that will translate a little better, right?
Mm-hmm.
I loved having De'Aaron King in the locker room, but it just didn't really work out, in my opinion, in terms of on the field stuff. But we have gotten lucky. We've gotten guys like KJ Osborne, we've gotten Jalen Phillips, De'Aaron King. We've really brought in some quality guys into the locker room through the transfer portal. If we're able to do that with the starting quarterback position and also have them be a high-level impact player, that would be very good for us for next season.
Yeah. And when it comes to those leaders, because we talk about various other guys who have been considered to be the leaders in the past, but I want to make the important distinction that they've called particular attention to the fact that Kinchens is not only a film junkie, but he also encourages and tells the other players on the team, let's go, you and me. We are going to the facility and we are watching this film.
Yeah.
There are other forms of, leaders where they will say, well, I'm going to go to the facility and I will be watching film. You are more than welcome to join me. Feel free to join me. You're welcome to join me. Not get your ass out of the room and let's go, dude.
Yeah.
So I think we need a little bit more get your ass out of the room and let's go, dudes.
Yeah.
I saw a clip of Edger and James earlier getting a tour of the workout facility at Miami right now, the weight room, how they have it on the side of the indoor practice facility. And he had heard that a couple of the players were missing workouts, and he was like, "How are you missing workouts with a facility like this? Back in my day, if you would have missed a workout, we would have beat your ass."
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's not the way that it is anymore, but the overall message with that is not necessarily the ass whooping; it's the accountability. So that's really what we're looking for. It's different now, and Kinchins is doing the accountability thing. Hey, not I'm going to watch film and you are free to join me, but let's go. I'm bringing your ass with me. You screwed up here. We are going to go watch this play 50 times until you get it.
Yep. I agree. I'd love that. I think there's an NFL player that I was heard a story like this about. I think it was Nick Chubb on the Cleveland Browns.
Mm-hmm.
But they said that he bought a PlayStation and an Xbox and, made online accounts and followed every single one of his teammates so that on Saturday nights he would get on and message all of them, stop playing Xbox or PlayStation. It's time to go to bed. We have a game tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just stuff like that, man. I'm with you. Like, we just need a dude with some fire to hold people accountable. And yeah, we could sure use could we clone Cam Kinchins 21 times and
oh my God. Dude, give me 22 Cam Kinchins and I will bring you a national championship.
Right.
Shit, give anybody 22 Cam Kinchins. A child could bring you a national championship.
Yeah. That's the thing is, like, you can win. I know that eventually talent will win out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually Alabama or Georgia will get the best of you. However, you can make some serious noise without elite talent. I mean, look at TCU this year.
Yeah.
Look
at Vanderbilt this afternoon. That was very nice.
Yeah. There is
upsetting Florida. That was tragic story for Florida. Very unfortunate.
Dude, screw the Gators. Can't stand them. But they're like heart and discipline and knowing your assignments, knowing your playbook and execution, like that can take you a long ways. That can take you to the college football playoff. I don't know if that can win you a national title anymore, but it can take you to the playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. Connecticut last year, I know that's the most recent example, of course. Yeah. But you just said it yourself, TCU this year. Now, those teams aren't always going to be more consistent. They're going to be more like flash in the pans. Yep. Most of the time, teams like Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, the foam is going to rise to the top.
Yeah.
And you're going to get your teams that sneak in there every now and again. But it all comes down to proper coaching, not committing penalties, execution, getting the job done. It's not always about having the fastest guys on the field or the strongest guys on the field. Sometimes you got to win in chess.
Yeah, and the good thing about being the University of Miami is that, if we can like kind of bust through that ceiling just once, get close to the playoff through execution, discipline, knowing your assignments, that type of stuff. We have the recruiting base and a head coach that is so good at recruiting that we can make that stack, right? I genuinely believe that if we had the right coach and if we got the right players in here, that we could turn it into, once again, being a blue chip program, because we don't have the recruiting limitations that TCU and Cincinnati and Boise State and, all of those types of programs. We don't have those challenges that they do. Right. I mean, you're selling kids
Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, programs like that, of course.
Yeah. And I mean, even schools like, University of Utah or,
Utah. Good point.
Any of these schools, even if they're Power 5, they're just not a traditional powerhouse. Like, we have a better opportunity than they do because of being in South Florida, because of, being a national brand and being able to attract, Yeah, the history. I mean, and we can still attract the attention of a top recruit, right? I mean, it doesn't matter how many years that the Utes, the Utah Utes finish in the top 15. They're never going to have like the number one recruit be like, I'm listening, I'm listening to the Utes. Maybe if they're from Utah, but, you're not
And
going to.
trying to prove a point. I think Missouri got like the best player in the class. It's a wide receiver who just happened to be born in Missouri. Congratulations. That's great. But otherwise,
Exactly.
Missouri, similar to Utah, you're not competing in a recruiting
Exactly. Like,
capacity like that.
we'll just say a kid from Los Angeles or a kid from South Florida or a kid from Texas, It's like there's only a few programs that are going to catch their eye if they're, the number one overall recruit. And it's going to be the Bamas, Ohio State, Georgia, and then obviously USC, Texas, Oklahoma, University of Miami, Florida State, Florida. Like all those schools are in there. We're part of that group. We just need to get it together, man. Hopefully Mario can do that next year.
I'm really hoping that we can. Man, we have to figure something out for the offense though, because for the defense, I know that it was 40 points, but
yeah,
I didn't feel terribly about that game.
Yeah.
Gave up and obviously the end result is all that matters, but you do kind of keep track of trends, the ebb and flow of the game, right? So they go out real quick, 1, 2, 3 touchdowns, up 21.
Yep.
That's fine. Then they don't do really anything in the second or third quarters. They don't do anything for the majority of the fourth quarter, and then they do 2 late touchdowns in the fourth quarter. So considering their overall time of possession plus our turnovers, not for nothing, it probably should have been worse than it was.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with the defense. There is some criticism that I saw Malik Rozier tweeted that Steele needs to learn how to call man coverage or play, have the defense play man coverage. Valid criticism, however, personnel is an issue there, right? We how many times have we seen our corners get absolutely torched this year in one-on-one man coverage, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not just making broad excuses for Coach Steele. I think there is room for improvement, but by and large, I am satisfied with our defense this year, considering that it's the roster's being overhauled, first year coach. So
I think that where I would draw the key distinction as opposed to a couple of, the last few years prior to this one, whenever we get gashed on defense now, it feels to me like as I'm watching it, it feels like I'm just watching the offense happen to call the right play and the quarterback threw a perfect pass and it just happened to be that way. In years past, it felt like, why were all of the defenders completely out of position on that one? Why was nobody near the football? In these ones, it's like someone's near the football. It just so happens that the offense made a fantastic play call. We didn't have the right play, but at least the players are in the right position. So I feel encouraged about that, although not tremendously positive.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also agree with the sentiment that Josh Gaddis, like, we just need something different, and I'm not even saying it has to be him getting fired, but like probably, yeah, and I'm fine with that too, like we just need something totally different on offense. We need a different approach, and so firing him is probably the best way to take care of that. But man, I really hope Mario will allow a more modern offense to take hold next year.
I hope so too. You do have those apprehensions with Mario as an offensive line kind of a guy that he's going to want to do ground and pound. Gaddis being a Big Ten guy, he's going to want to do ground and pound as well. It's a more physical style of football in that kind of capacity. But in the more southeastern regions such as this and heading up the East Coast, it's a more athletic style of football. It's just not that way.
Yeah.
Somebody made a joke and they said, leave Gaddis on the tarmac. And I said, you really want to let him on the bus after the game? I don't know about that.
Right.
Right. We had 13 total drives. 5 of those drives ended in punts. We had 5 total first downs for the game. So we had the same amount of punts as first downs. We turned the ball over 3 times. we failed a fourth down conversion, and we took a safety. We got a field goal, and our only touchdown, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, was because Clemson just fumbled it on their own 10. So that's not a product of the offense doing anything with the ball. That is a product of good job by the defense, forcing the fumble and landing on top of it. And it just so happened to be on Clemson's 10-yard line. Thank goodness it wasn't at the 45. Otherwise, we might have punted or maybe gotten another field goal.
Yeah.
98 total yards. I mean, unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, and it's unacceptable as well. So, I mean, who was it? Clemson played some group of 5 team, or maybe even FCS team earlier in the season that had like 350 yards against them. I want to say Austin Peay, but I don't think it was Austin Peay. But it was some team like that. They were able to rack up 350 yards of offense. The Hurricanes doing less than 100 today. It's inexcusable, man.
Yeah, completely inexcusable. Especially when I'm not asking them to rack up yards, but you need to at least get the ball down to the 35 or 30 and give the kicker a chance. That's still pathetic that you wouldn't be able to punch in a touchdown. But like I said, we had, 5 punts and 3 turnovers and a failed fourth down. So that's 9 failed drives, completely drives. Yeah. If 4 of those were field goals, that's 12 points. Come on. We're talking about a different game.
Yeah. Well, how many of those 98 yards were from? Didn't Jakari have a 40-yard run early, and then that pass to Will Mallory that went for like 30 yards as well? So
yeah,
I mean that right there is 70% of your offense in 2 plays. So unacceptable. But
and even if you wanted to say it was 13 drives, if you really want to say 12, you could say 12 drives, because the 13th drive was that little one at the end of the game, just run the clock, run the ball in the game. So really like 12 real offensive drives, but still, I mean, 12 offensive drives. Come on, man.
Yeah. Well, we should probably wrap up. I got some other plans that I got to get to, but thanks everyone out there for checking out the post-game show. Make sure you go to aboutthefans.com. Check out the cool Miami gear that we got there. And Petrie, thanks, man. Love doing this with you.
Yeah, man, dude, it's always a blast. I have a great time doing it every week. And dude, I hope you have a good time tonight with your plans, and we will talk soon.
Okay, next week, man. Right. Miami versus Pitt. Go Canes.
Go Canes, everybody.